Hello. So today I want to tell you guys about the so-called infinite inflation that the Bitcoin maximalists seem to claim that Monero has. While technically infinite, it is not infinite within a normal span of a human lifetime, so to use this as an argument against Monero is misleading and incorrect, if you ask me. So what we've got here is a chart of the halvings of Bitcoin in the blue and the emission of Monero in red. So what happens is every 4 years, Bitcoin gets halved. The amount of Bitcoin that get released gets halved. Boom, in half. Goes another 4 years, boom, in half. Another 4 years, boom, in half. Until it gets to a point where it's basically nothing. Because, of course, as everybody knows, Bitcoin has a 21 million hard cap. Now, the difference that Monero has is that it has a slow emission, and it's not as drastic as Bitcoin either. It's not like a shock to the system and then 4 years and then another shock. It's very gradual, very slow, very, nice. And then in June 2022, give or take a month or two, what's going to happen is the Monero tail emission is going to kick in. So this is going to happen when there's 18.5 million Monero that have been mined. And after that, there will be zero point 0.6 Monero mined per block forever after that. Now, why the hell would you want this? Well, the biggest reason is security, right? So, where does the security for a blockchain network come from? It comes from the miners. But with the miners on Bitcoin, every 4 years, their revenue gets cut in half. And that's okay if the Bitcoin price keeps rising forever. And you also have to think about the fees that it costs to send a transaction on chain with Bitcoin too. Like with Monero, since we have this zero point 0.6 emission that stays forever, basically what happens is that kind of offsets some of the minor fees that you would be paying. Now, the tail emission ties in to Monero in a few different ways with the dynamic block sizes. The fees on Monero are kind of set, and what a fun fact is actually the more people that use Monero, um, the less fees that you'll have to pay because there'll be more transactions per block. So back to the security part. What happens when the Bitcoin halvings get so small that the block reward is pretty much nothing, right? Now the idea, if you're not familiar with this, is that fees are going to be replaced. I mean, block reward is going to be replaced by fees. So with Monero, since you have this zero point 0.6 block reward forever, the fees are just going to be less forever than Bitcoin. But since Bitcoin gets halved and halved and halved to nothing, what's going to replace those block rewards is going to be the fees that you pay to send a transaction. We're already seeing this with Bitcoin. It's going to become even more prohibitively expensive to send a Bitcoin transaction than it already is. Now, if we go to this one, you're like, okay, 0.6 XMR per block. What does that actually mean, right? Well, here you go. Here's a nice chart. The blue line again is Bitcoin, and the red is Monero. This line here is when the tail emission kicks in, and as you can see, it's a linear line that goes up at 0.6 XMR per block forever. Now, there's actually going to be less coins than Bitcoin until sometime in 2040, maybe 2041. I'm not sure exactly where that is. And then the amount of Monero will surpass Bitcoin. So it's going to take from 2022 until 2040, 18 years, to surpass Bitcoin's 21 million. Now, that's 3.5 million coins, 18.5 to 21. That's 3.5 million. Cutting into the video right here, my math was wrong. 18.5 to 21 is 2.5. So it's actually even less than what I said in the video. And it's going to take 18 years. Now, as you can see, by 2050, it's going to be like 22, 23 million maybe. So it's not like it's inflating at a crazy ridiculous amount or anything. It's going up at less than 1% per year starting out. Now, when you think about it like that, it's not exactly right because, okay, right here there's 18.5 Monero, 18.5 million. Right here there's 21 million, but it's still 0.6 XMR per block. So 0.6 XMR per block is a smaller proportion in the entire amount of coins of Monero here than it is here. So the inflation actually drops over time. It asymptotically approaches zero. If you're at all familiar with math, you'll know what that means. It's also worth noting here that the inflation rate of gold, which has been a store of value for the last 2,000 or more years, the inflation rate is about 2% a year. So the inflation rate on Monero is even better than that of gold. So here, to the left of the dashed lines are what has actually happened, and then to the right is the projected in the future. So, a lot of these people that like to talk bad about Monero and say it has an infinite supply, while true, technically, within a human lifetime, that inflation is pretty much negligible. You know, and because there's not a security guarantee on Bitcoin with a perpetual block reward, we don't know the future security of Bitcoin. That is a huge risk. It's a much safer bet, in my opinion, to hold Monero for the long term if you're worried about these uh, fees and stuff, because there's always going to be incentive to mine Monero, and that might not always be the case for Bitcoin. I mean, obviously, I do think people are still going to be sending transactions on Bitcoin. I don't think the network's going to straight up fail, but to use Bitcoin is going to be so godly expensive when we get up into this area. Maybe when we even get right here, when we start getting close. We don't even have to get up here. It's going to be really interesting to see what happens in these years here as we get closer and closer and closer and the mission is pretty much done. Um, we don't know exactly what's going to happen because obviously this hasn't happened before. But yeah, I just wanted to make this video because I've seen a lot of comments lately about people saying that Monero has an infinite inflation, so it's a shitcoin and it doesn't have a hard cap, so that means it's just trash and you know, these people are just ignorant. They don't understand. If they took 5 seconds to really look into the monetary policy of Monero, they would realize that it is really not extreme at all. It's actually quite conservative, and when you think about it, when it comes to the block reward and miner incentives, it's actually possibly a safer bet than Bitcoin itself. So, yeah, thank you for watching, and I hope you learned something today.